Coffee is life. Hello, my name is Heather, and as always, I am reading with a vengeance, and I hope you are as well. Today, I am here to talk to you about the books I've been reading so far. So this is a mid-month reading wrap-up. I hadn't intended on doing mid-month reading wrap-ups, but I want to keep my videos under 30 minutes. If you're like me and you have the attention span of a gnat, I just want to try to keep them short and to the point. And I realized a couple of days ago that I was on my 10th book. So instead of waiting until the end, and who knows how many I will read from now until the end of March, if I have 10 books to talk about, I wanted to go ahead and do a video and talk about those so far. One of the things I wanted to address in this video is a couple of videos ago, I did a video on middle grade March. And it's very, very new to me as I'm new to Booktube. The concept of middle grade March, I thought, based on a lot of the videos that I've watched, that it was just read middle grade books for the month of March and talk about them. But it turns out there's actually a reading challenge, a specific reading challenge every year. And the one that I'm talking about is hosted by 3 booktubers. It is Amanda at the Curly Reader, Krista from Books and Jams, and Katie from Life Between Words. And every year, I believe they have 5 different prompts that you follow. So when I talked about middle grade March in my video, I didn't, for one, tell you the names of the hosts and say that there was like a specific challenge every year. And I didn't tell you what the prompts were. So I'll quickly go over the prompts. So there are 5 of them. The first one is a book with 5 or more words in the title. Number 2 is book featuring an orphan as the main character. Number 3 is a contemporary novel. The 4th is a book set in Asia or featuring an Asian main character. And then the 5th one is a book older than you are, which I won't go into details, but it's a little bit more difficult for me as an average booktuber, but I think I was able to do it. So anyways, the ones that I picked in my original video, I didn't have the prompts handy, so I kind of had to fit the prompts to the books that I picked, and I think I did okay, and I've read some of them already. I still have some left to read, so if I wanted to change them up I could, but I've already picked them out. I've already borrowed them from the library, so I don't think I'm going to change them. But anyways, I wanted to clear that up just in case there were anybody out there watching saying, hey man, why didn't she say the hosts of the middle grade March readathon, or why didn't she let people know about the prompts? So I did do my research, and those are the prompts and those are the hosts, and I thank those hosts for putting on this prompt because I've really had fun with it so far. Did I say putting on that prompts? I thank those hosts for putting on this challenge or readathon. I'm not sure which one it is. Again, I'm new here, don't judge me. So let's get on with the books that I've read so far. The first book I read, I did for another reading challenge that I'm doing. I'm doing the Read Your Bookshelf. I'm doing the Read Your Bookshelf reading challenge. That's a year-long challenge that's hosted by Chantel over at Chantel Reads All Day. And every month she has a prompt for the book that you pick. And I only heard about it last month, so I wanted to catch up and read January's prompt and February's prompt and March's prompt, which I have done. And I'll link her channel down below. Specifically, I'll link the video that she talks about the reading challenge. And I think she has on that video links to a webpage that you can go to and kind of keep track of the books that you read for the challenge. I heard about this challenge through Gloria over at Gloria Z. Thompson. I like her channel as well. I'll link those all down below, as well as I'll link the host to the middle grade March reading challenge. So the first prompt in Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf challenge, the word quiet. So either quiet is in the title of the book or something kind of relating to quiet or serene or peaceful or something like that. The book that I picked to meet that prompt was Comfort Me with Apples by Catherynne and Valente. I'm sure you've all heard of this. This is kind of making its way around the booktube community. Sorry about that shine. It's a library book. This book is an adult horror fantasy, and it's somewhat of a retelling. I don't want to say what the retelling is because I don't think it's listed in the synopsis, and you kind of pick it up as you read the book. And I think that would be a spoiler if I said what it is. But I will tell you that the story it's retelling is very well known. I had an okay time with this one. I think it was a little bit beyond me in the fantasy way. It's written like a horror, and I enjoyed that. She also did kind of a play on names, which I found interesting, and I won't spoil that for you either. It's very beautifully written. I don't think it was my cup of tea. So it's very short though. I mean, if you're at all interested or intrigued by it, definitely pick it up. You can probably get through it in one sitting. It's 101 pages. I just don't think it was up my street. So I gave this 2.75 stars. So the next book I read was Book Love by Debbie Tung. And I picked this one because the prompt for the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge for February was a book with love in the title. So this was pretty easy. This is a graphic novel, and it's absolutely adorable, and I think it's absolute must read by any book lover out there. It's relatable. Every page, any book lover will be like, oh yeah, that's my life. Oh yeah, been there. I'll try to pop in maybe 1 page or 2 page of basically a day in any book lover's life. I absolutely loved it. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read, I listened to, and that was Pieces of Her by Karin Slaughter. I enjoyed it. I love Karin Slaughter. I mentioned her in my previous video, Celebrating Women. This is classic Karin Slaughter. She starts off with a bang. She doesn't, you don't get too far into the book before you realize what the heck is going on or something big happens. And something big does happen at the very beginning of the book, but then it goes a whole different direction that I did not expect, but I really enjoyed where it went. Karin Slaughter, if you're not familiar, she writes crime thrillers, somewhat police procedural, but they are always fast-paced. She does deal with relationships between people, which I enjoy. She makes the crime police drama-y-ish part of it more relatable. So yes, I enjoyed this one. I believe they did a Netflix series based on this book. So, and it also has one of my favorite actresses, Toni Collette, in it. So I am looking forward to watching that. So I gave Pieces of Her 4 stars. The next book I read, to be fair, I started it in February, but in my defense, it's a freaking chunker. It was over 600 pages, and that is, Deception on His Mind by Elizabeth George. This is a series that I've talked about before. Sorry again about the glare. This is another library book. This is the 9th, I believe, in a series, and it's the Detective Inspector Thomas Linley series. And I've been reading them for quite a few years. They're mostly chunkers like this, so it's taken me a while to get through them. And as it says in the title, Thomas Linley is a detective inspector from Scotland Yard, and he's the main character, and he's a blue blood. As a matter of fact, I think he's got like a title of a duke or earl or something like that, and how they explain at some point how someone in royalty becomes a detective inspector, but I don't remember now. Anyways, he's very, very blue blood, and you know, he's used to luxury and having money, and he's very James Bondy, but without the spy quality to him. And he is paired, his partner though is very, very opposite. His partner is Sergeant Barbara Havers, and she is very, very middle class. I think she is described as frumpy and plain and wears scuffed shoes and clutch my pearls. And so they're very, very different in their background and in how they approach police work, but they're paired together, and it's so much fun to watch how they work together. There's a lot of humor in it, but at the same time, they're dealing with serious crimes and they're solving a mystery in each book. This one was very different. This is the first, and I hope it's the last time they do this, but this one didn't have Thomas Linley in it. And I think the charm of this whole series is the relationship between Linley and Havers. But for whatever reason, Lindley's out of the picture in this one, and Havers, she's on leave from getting injured from their last mystery, and so she's on leave for a little bit, an extended leave, and she hears about a murder that happens in another town, and under the guise of going on a vacation, she goes to this town because she also hears that someone that she went to the academy with is in charge of the investigation. So she wants to get involved, and also her neighbor, I forget his name, but he has an 8-year-old daughter, and Barbara's super fond of her, and these two end up going to this town, and they're involved in this murder. And the other thing that I found was fascinating to follow. This book was published, I think, in 1998, 1999, and it deals a lot with the racial tension between the English and Pakistani immigrants, and even people who are English citizens, but they have Pakistani heritage. And there's racial tension, and they deal with it in this book. The victim is Pakistani, and so the people in the Pakistani community think that it's a hate crime, and so they go from there. So it's an interesting look at the cultural differences and how people overcome them. So it was an okay. It's not my favorite in the series. Oh, and one other thing that kind of bothered me about this one is I think if I were to add up all the words, all the sentences and paragraphs that were used to describe the heat throughout this book, she probably could have taken out 30 pages of this book. She mentioned the heat, I swear, on every other page. Yes, it's hot. We get it. And that was kind of annoying. It got to the point where it was like funny annoying, but still. So there was that. Anyways, I will continue on with the series, with my obsession with British crime. And as I said, I think I would have enjoyed it more if Thomas Lindley was a part of it, but I think it was by design that it was just Barbara handling this case. I gave this 3 stars. The next book I read was From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. This is a very well-known middle grade book. I can't believe I hadn't read it before. It's been on my TBR for a very long time. The prompt I am applying to this book is a contemporary fiction, even though it's been a long time since it was written. When it did come out, it was considered contemporary. And, to be honest, I had to look up really what contemporary meant for fiction as it applies to fiction, because I always thought that contemporary meant present day. And it does a little bit, but more so, I believe it refers to that whatever is happening in this book can actually happen in real life. I think another way of saying contemporary fiction is realistic fiction. So I was able to apply that to this book. Anyway, and if I didn't mention, it's by E.L. Konigsburg. If you don't know, this is about Claudia, and she decides to run away from home for reasons that she does explain. And she enlists the help of her younger brother, Jamie, because he is better at saving money, and she knows that she needs money. And she's trying to save up money, but she can't do it as easily as Jamie. So she grabs her brother, and they run away from a suburb of New York, I believe, and they go to New York City, and they end up hiding out in a museum. And as the synopsis says, they get kind of wrapped up in a mystery of a piece that the museum has acquired, and this mystery is it makes headlines, and the children get involved with trying to solve the mystery of this piece that has been acquired by the museum. Now, I understand I'm not the target audience for this book, but I feel like it was falsely advertised a little bit. So the majority of this book is basically their shenanigans trying to survive in a museum. They spend the night in the museum, they bathe in the museum, they have to hide from security every night and make their appearance kind of known on the sly every morning when they open. They have to stretch their meager budget to eat every day. And I think to a middle grade person, this would be so much fun. So I would highly recommend it if your kids are middle grade age. But this is less about the mystery and more about their survival in the museum. So it's cute. I gave it 3 stars, and I am glad that I read it. The next book I read was Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. I believe this is my first Seanan McGuire, and this is part of my fantasy genre journey. And this is one of those books I have an unpopular opinion. I didn't get along with. It was beautifully written. I feel like my journey in fantasy, I should kind of do adult fantasy, not kind of, I should do adult fantasy first, because I think the combination of young adult and fantasy is not a good one for me. So this one was, like I said, it was beautifully written. And for me to describe what it's about, I don't think I would even be able to describe what it's about. So I'll read the synopsis really quick from Goodreads. So Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children. No solicitations, no visitors, no quests. Children have always disappeared under the right conditions, slipping through the shadows under a bed or at the back of a wardrobe, tumbling down rabbit holes and into old wells and emerging somewhere else. But magical lands have little need for used up miracle children. Nancy tumbled once, but now she's back. The things she's experienced, they change a person. The children under Miss West's care understand all too well, and each of them is seeking a way back to their own fantasy world. But Nancy's arrival marks a change at the home. There's darkness just around each corner, and when tragedy strikes, it's up to Nancy and her newfound schoolmates to get to the heart of the matter, no matter the cost. It's beautifully written. I believe the narrator did a good job. I just didn't care. I liked the characters. I liked how she developed the characters, but the story itself about the children who go missing from their world and they go into this other world to figure out how to get back to their world. Yeah, I just didn't care. I gave this one 2.5 stars. The next book I read was The Appeal not by John Grisham, but by Janice Hallett. And this one is being talked a lot about right now. And I read this on my Kindle. I really enjoyed this one. This is a mystery, and it is, what's that word? Epistolary? The book is written through emails and text messages. Almost the entire, I would say 90% of it. The great thing about this book is that it's one of those books that you, as a reader, can solve the mystery if you're paying attention. However, I don't recommend reading it on a Kindle because, or a reading device. I highly recommend reading the physical copy so that you can flip back and look at things if you want to solve the mystery yourself. If you don't, then no worries. But I had a hard time doing that on my Kindle because I'm like, wait a minute, what did that one email say? What was the date of that one thing? Because you have to pay attention to dates and names and when the email was sent. And at first it's a little bit hard to follow, but once you're into it, I read it in 2 days. It's over 400 pages, I think. A murder has been committed. There's been somebody convicted. An attorney has been hired because he believes that the wrong person is in jail, and he enlists 2 interns and he sends them basically an email saying, hey, go over all this correspondence. I feel that the wrong person is in prison, and I'm not going to tell you who I think it is. I want fresh eyes. I want you to go over all this evidence, and I want to see if you come up with the same thing I did. So these 2 interns are reading these emails as the reader is, and it's basically this community of people, like a theater group, and some of them are related. They put on this play every quarter. They put on a play, and through these emails of them organizing the play, and so there's that. And then one of the characters has a 2-year-old daughter who has apparently been diagnosed with a terminal illness. And so this theater group comes together to try to put out an appeal to raise money to get this new treatment for this illness that she has. So all these emails of organizing fundraisers and, coming together for this sick child, along with organizing the play they're putting on, and just the relationships between all these people, and then someone is killed, and someone gets charged with the murder. A lot going on, very fast read. I would definitely recommend this book if you like a good mystery, especially if you like to try to solve it yourself. I gave this 4 stars. The next book I read was a compilation of comics, and this is the Mutts Autumn Diaries by Patrick McDonnell. And I've read the spring one and the winter one, and I love this comic. We've got, I believe, Earl and Mooch, cat and dog. They're best friends. They're shenanigans. It's cute. It's just kind of a way for me to kind of break up my more serious reads. Most of it is black and white, but every once in a while they'll have a color panel, and it's just cute, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 3 stars. The next book I read was A Psalm for the Wild Built, sorry about the glare, by Becky Chambers. This is a sci-fi. It's a novella. It's very short. I got through it pretty quickly, and I loved this way more than I anticipated. I believe sci-fi is going to turn into one of my favorite genres. Who would have thought? And I found out this is the first, there's going to be a follow-up to this one. It doesn't come out until July. And I discovered this one because the one, of course, that's very popular of hers, the series, the Wayfarer series, but it's A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. But I picked this one as the March prompt for the Read Your Bookshelf. The word prompt is growth. And so it had to have some kind of something growing on the cover, plant. The theme of the book might be like personal growth, something like that. So I was a little bit more basic about how I applied that prompt, and I picked a book that had something growing on the cover, and there's all kinds of plants here. And it just happened to be available at the library. So I picked this one, and I'm so glad that I did. I love this book so much. So what it's about. So it takes place in a utopian future. Think of the future for us where, well, not so far future, where robots are basically doing all of our work. And in this book, it's referred to as the factory age. And robots become so pervasive in human life that they become sentient creatures. And so the humans, I think it's the humans, that decide to set them all free and let all the robots go and live their lives. And then humans are left kind of to their own devices, and they're kind of returned to a world of living off the land. They have computers, which I think is weird, but everything else, they live off the land. The main character, Dex, is non-binary, which I thought was really great representation in this book. Dex is and I forget the term they use, but what they do for a living is provide tea, basically kind of like psychological services for people. People come to Dex wanting to talk and tell their problems to, and then Dex prepares a cup of tea for them and provides them counsel and make them feel better, and that's their job. But Dex feels like there's more to life, so they go on this quest out in the middle of nowhere, and they meet a robot who has been sent by the population of robots to see how the humans are doing. And so this particular robot knows nothing about how humans live, and Dex really doesn't know anything about robots. And so they continue on this journey learning about each other, and it's beautiful. And there's some funny parts, just very heartwarming parts, and it really makes you think about just what it is to be human. And I absolutely loved it. I'm so looking forward to the follow-up. And if you have any interest at all in science fiction with a heart, I would recommend this. I gave this 5 stars. And finally, the 10th book I've read so far for the month of March is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. But I chose to read this one this month as part of the middle grade March. And the prompt that I decided to apply to this one is a book with 5 or more words in the title. So that was pretty easy. And look at this cover. It's so beautiful. I absolutely love it. This is a library book as well. This is a gorgeous book. It's beautifully written, and it is about a town. The elders of the town tell the town that there's a witch in the woods, and in order to keep the witch at bay, they have to sacrifice a newborn infant every year. And they do so by placing the infant in the woods. and give it up to the witch, and the witch does whatever she does. As far as the elders of this town, there is no witch. This is just a way to kind of keep power over the people in this town. But unbeknownst to the elders, there actually is a witch, and the witch comes and takes the child. But what she does is she cares for the child, and then she brings it to another town where she lets the different families adopt these abandoned babies. Until one day, a baby is left, and the witch takes the baby, and because she is a witch and she does have magical properties, she would feed these babies starlight, and it would nourish them until she's able to hand the baby over to a family. This one baby that she gets in her care, she accidentally feeds her moonlight, which ultimately enmagics her, so she becomes this magic child. And because she's a magic child, she can't give a magic child to anybody else, and she ends up raising this baby as her own. And she teaches her the ways of magic, and it just kind of goes from there. There are other layers to this story that I won't go into, but there's a lot more going on in this book. I'm actually kind of surprised that it is a middle grade book. I mean, it has magic, it has witches, it has dragons, it has all the good stuff that make a good middle grade magic, that makes a good middle grade book. But there are themes in here that go deeper than... My dogs are playing in the background. There's love, there's relationships between mothers and daughters, there's found family. It's beautiful, and not that middle graders shouldn't read that, but I feel like, I don't know, if you are an adult who enjoy middle grade, you will really love this book. Like I said, it just goes deeper than your average magical middle grade fantasy. And it's kind of a chunker as far as middle grades go. There's almost 400 pages in this book, but it is a quick read. I enjoyed it. I have to say I enjoyed it. There was a section in here that kind of lost the thread for me, but I would recommend it, and I gave it 3.5 stars. So those are the books I've read so far this month. I still have quite a few books that I want to read by the end of the month. I am currently listening to Anne of Green Gables, which I have never read before. I can't believe I never read that as a child, but for that one, I am choosing the orphan as a main character. I'm about halfway through that, and I am enjoying it. It started off a little iffy for me. Man, that girl can talk. My next middle grade March book I want to read is a classic, A Wrinkle in Time, and this is the one I found that's older than I am, so that's gonna be next up for me. And then I also want to start the Nevermore series. The books that I really want to get to by the end of the month are books that I chose that are on the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction. I was able to get only these two from the library, and they're due, I want to say, the end of March. And I have a feeling that because of the Women's Prize for Fiction, other people will be waiting for these books. So if there's a hold on these books, I'm not going to be able to renew them. So I need to finish these by the end of the month. And that's the final revival of Opal and Neve and The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. I can't remember. But anyways, I want to read these by the end of the month so that I can get them back to the library, because I'm quite certain I'm not going to be able to renew them. There's going to be people waiting for these. So those are the ones that are going to be coming up next. And I will be doing a reading wrap-up at the end of the month. What about you? What have you been reading so far? Have you read any of these books? Are you doing Middle Grade March? Are you doing any reading challenges? I have to know. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support. If you've made it this far, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. It really helps my channel. Until next time, bye-bye.